Agenda, start off with item number 1, approving the minutes of the November 6, 2018 meeting. If there's no questions or comments, so moved by Mr. Redmond. Do I have a second?
Second.
She beat you to it, Jim. Ms. Herbst is the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That item carries. Item number 2 for the Director's Report on Utility Operations. Mr. Redmond?
Yeah, if any of the commissioners have any questions or comments related to the number of items that are on the report. Joe won't be here today. He did send me an email. He did have a couple of questions on fact getting the Class B sludge out, the biosolids out. And so we have been working with, or the staff has been working with the landfill to get approvals to start bringing it there over time. So we will be landfilling some of that, so there'll be additional cost to the sewer utility.
What is the tipping fee?
Did we?
haven't approved it, and I don't have an exact number.
Okay.
I'm expecting it's gonna cost $75,000 to $100,000.
I got a question also.
I'm sorry, Dave, 75 to 100,000?
Can you turn your microphone, please, Dave? Just click it on. There you go.
Yeah, I'd estimated before $75,000 to $100,000, but maybe they'll be able to give us a little bit of a better rate if they can use it beneficially in some way. But that's where we're waiting to hear back from them.
That's an annual cost, Dave?
That should, catch us up. We wouldn't haul more than we have to. We would carry as much over as we could until spring and hope to get it spread in the spring. But our shed is almost full now, and so we're gonna have to do something.
That's what I was going to ask, because if we do take in these other communities in the future, we're going to have more space.
Well, one of the things in the future with our facilities plan is that we're looking at going to a Class A sludge, where for one thing it would be dried. And so right now we're hauling, if we did do that, we'd be hauling 80 to 85% water and 15 to 20% solids.
No.
And it'd turn it around the other way. It'd be 15 to 20% water and 80 to 85% solids. So there'd be less material. And then also, it hopefully wouldn't ever have to go to a landfill. Being Class A sludge, they could use it in more different places. It wouldn't be, we could give it away or sell it or find somebody interested in taking it. And so hopefully we'd have it set up and it would be entirely different circumstances.
Is there any possibility someone would come in and make mill organite out of it?
Basically, it would be mill organite. If we bagged it and sold it as 50-pound bags, it would be raw organite. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Dave, is Class A in the facilities plan?
Yes, the dried material would be Class A.
And is it a drying process?
Yeah, there's a kind of like a big pizza oven, and so then that would dry.
So we'd be going to dried pellets?
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's pelletized, but it'd be dried
material.
powder-like material, yeah.
Is that well, that has to do with the facilities plan, which is another issue, I guess.
Sure.
Any other questions in regards for the Director's Report?
Is there anything new on the regionalization?
Yeah, I do have an update, item 6, that we can cover that, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the Director's Report.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Redmond. Do I have a second? By Ms. Herbst. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That item carries. Item number 3, a request for approval for the purchase of treatment chemicals. Quotes open at the November 6th BOPW meeting.
So the items highlighted in yellow are the companies that we're proposing to buy those chemicals from. These are all the low bidders under each one of these. Hydride lime will be with Graymont Western Lime. Sodium hypochlorite will be with Olin, we'll purchase from. The sodium silicate, Occidental Chemical, and liquid carbon dioxide from Airgas. And these would be for the 2019 chemical purchases moving forward.
Commissioners, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing as how there's none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I'll entertain the motion.
Motion by Ms. Herbst. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Forrest. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That item carries. Item number 4, discussion and possible action on approving the budget for the 2019 local road projects.
So initially, because of the 3 large road projects that we have, 2 DOT projects, Town Line Road and First Avenue, and as well as Thomas Street going on in 2019, we did not have any local road projects budgeted. Since that time, there's been some federal funding through the Community Development Block Grant that's been allocated for one section of First Street, basically from Short Street north, for reconstruction, and part of that would be the utilities underneath. So the total utilities cost would be estimated right now with contingencies at $160,000. We don't have specific line items in the capital budget for that, but we do have line items in each one of the water and sewer budgets for miscellaneous water and sewer extensions. I don't exactly know what the breakdown is, but I would just estimate it would be $80,000 would come out of each one of those line items, one for sewer and one for water. So we could utilize those grant funds with the development block grant and get that street reconstruction done, as well as the improvement on our water and sewer.
Is that First Street section, is that north of Scott or south of Scott? I don't know where Short Street is.
North of Scott. Yeah, it goes basically from Short Street up. There's a dead end. I don't think it quite gets to Bridge Street, right? It doesn't, First Street there? Is it?
It runs west. It's just north of the railroad tracks on Third.
North.
It runs from Short, it tees into Bridge.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So it does it actually tees into Bridge then?
Yes.
Okay, okay, all right.
Okay, so is there any work planned on South First Avenue, south of Bridge Street, south of Scott Street?
No, no, on First Street south of,
First Street, yes.
yeah, south
No,
of
no,
Scott.
I'm sorry. God, I wish we didn't have this Avenue Street business in the city. First Avenue, south of Scott.
South of Scott.
From Thomas north to Scott on South First Avenue.
Right, South First Avenue, we are reconstructing from Thomas Street to Stewart Avenue, along the river there.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, that's a terrible, terrible stretch of road.
it is, yes, it's overdue.
Okay.
Like so many things. Any other questions or comments? Then I'll entertain a motion to accept item number 4.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Redmond. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Forrest. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That item carries. Item number 5, an update on the public comment question and answers.
Through our public comment period, through the public hearing on the sewer rate increase, we did have some questions raised. I did work with Mr. Urbanek. He provided them in writing. We had done some, based on his questions, we had reached out to some local agencies as well as, to answer these the best that we can. But this is really an update for you on what his questions were, as well as our responses to those questions. I just wanted to make sure that with all of our public comment and stuff, it was on the record, and that if any of the commissioners had any questions with it, or that we could follow.
Mr. Urbanek is here today. Does he have any comments at this point?
Actually, you made a request to speak at the end, and
Okay.
unless you want to come, I'm comfortable one way or the other. If you want to come forward right now, again, if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, and then also your name and your address, sir.
Okay, my name is Dennis Urbanek, and I live at 1505 Pine View Lane in Wausau. A couple of comments to start off with. One is appreciate the opportunity to comment. Second, would like to thank Eric for his response and the time he spent on the questions, so that's appreciated. My interest in the waste treatment plant expansion is really to assure that we, in my mind, we have a cost-effective expansion that results in a cost-effective service cost. I know we have to do it, so in my mind, that's not an open item. A couple of things, starting with regionalization, and one is do we have any idea what are the approximate net tangible financial benefits to Wausau? And I'll kind of leave that at that. And it kind of ties into my second question is, can we, if we go to regionalization, can that part of the waste treatment plant be, quote, a profit center? Can we charge more than what our costs are? Maybe a 10% surcharge?
Okay.
I don't know how that's regulated, but it seems to me if it's worth doing for somebody else, maybe it could be more of a advantageous to us in Wausau. Find it interesting concept, may or may not go. My third question is who's leading the regionalization effort, and if the outlying communities have a need for this type of thing, I would, they and possibly the DNR would be very involved in trying to move this thing forward, and would have a schedule that would say when they would be willing to commit or not commit based on whatever information they need. My last question, and again, I'm not my familiarity with a lot of political type things is limited, is if we do go to regionalization and it is not a profit center, is that something that the taxpayer should vote on via a referendum? Next area I wanted to just briefly touch base on is the cost capability of our treatment plant. And in looking at the capital cost provided, recognizing that they're approximate, that if we do regionalize, it would require about a $7 million expenditure to meet those regionalization needs. Looking at that as a standalone, if that's the case, then I think the additional $68 million that would be called for, which takes out the regionalization and the phosphorus, becomes an opportunity to really look at. The upgrade requirements and benefits, at least to me, are nebulous. And I don't understand the components of that's involved in that, the admin, increased capacity, redundancy, et cetera, that we think are required. One other thing I noted was the projections on the additional households to be served over the next 20 years. And if $7 million does it for regionalization, that $7 million, if there is no regionalization, should be able to support the households going forward for the next 20 years. Kind of a perception on my part, having lived in the city for almost the most of 40 years, is that the city government has well-maintained facilities, from what little exposure I've had to them, functional and modern equipment, and I see that in services around the neighborhood I live in, and a very responsible and efficient personnel, from cleaning leaves to anything else. They've always seemed to be on top of what they need to do and do a good job, and have a very positive attitude. So to me, I find it very gratifying.
Spread the word.
Pardon?
Spread the word.
I will do that. Last comments on permit and rates. And residential rates are forecast to increase by about 79% based on your projection. I'm not sure what the non-residential rate would increase is. but wow, that's excessive in my opinion, based on the world we live in and with a number of folks on fixed incomes that could stretch them a bit. And lastly, regarding the industrial customers, question is, are they tested for their phosphorus discharge as part of their discharge into our wastewater treatment plant? Again, my experience is a little bit of phosphorus goes a long way. If they have boilers at one time, many of them use phosphorus-containing compounds, and it's not huge, but it's huge when you look at the new restrictions. So those are my questions. Would appreciate a response at some point in time. And again, thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you for your kind words, sir, and we will get back to you. Some detailed questions, but Eric is very good in getting back to folks, no matter what the question is. So, but again, thank you for the kind words. Every now and then it's nice to hear. All right, moving on to item number 6, an update on the discussions related to wastewater regionalization for Marathon and Edgar.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with Marathon City and Strand and Donahue last week on Thursday for the latest update. So right now, Marathon, it sounds like Edgar is going to do their own thing, because initially we were talking about Marathon City. Edgar would, carry their wastewater to Marathon City. Marathon City would carry both communities to the city of Wausau. The latest information I received on Thursday, and I haven't had a lot of direct communication with Jennifer Lopez over at Edgar, but it sounds, and I had reached out to her, but she has not responded, and it sounds like that they're maybe doing something on their own. Marathon City is still interested in regionalization with the city of Wausau. The capital costs are more than if they stayed on their own, which is something that they are struggling with. I guess to get to maybe a couple of the questions that Dennis had asked too with the regionalization is that when we look at borrowing money, regionalization with the DNR, there is a forgivable side of that loan. It's not much, but out of the amount that we have, but it's $2 million for the first community to regionalize and $1 million for each additional community to regionalize. So if it were just Marathon City and the city of Wausau, we'd be looking at $3 million total in forgivable loan. And so, when we're looking at an overall project on the wastewater treatment facility side of with regionalization of about 85 million estimated, as well as the collection system improvements, those I estimate $10 million, something like that, maybe a little less for the regionalization, but something that would have to happen immediately. That $3 million doesn't carry very far. And so it's one of the things that we're looking at, trying to push legislators to increase that forgivable amount, to make more incentives for regionalization and to reducing point source discharges. I think if the numbers stay the way they're at, I'm not sure that Marathon City is going to be able to make that commitment to come to Wausau. It's going to be less expensive for them to stay where they're at. And just make improvements on their own. And so, although talking with Andy Kurtz, the village administrator, as well as the board president, they're hoping that something might break loose with the DNR to make it more palatable. It is any cost that we have to do for the regionalization will be borne by the other communities for their flow. So if Marathon City comes in, this is just one example, we would need to build a second clarifier. That cost is about $2.7 million. That's a cost that Marathon City would have to bear. So that adds to their capital cost. The city of Wausau taxpayers or users are not going to fund that bill. I think the commission has been pretty clear on that. The mayor's been pretty clear on that. We've been pretty clear with that with Marathon City as well. So I think the avenue is trying to get additional regionalization incentives, but, you know, that's going to be a request and a kind of a waiting game. So that's the latest that I know right now. I know Marathon City is going to want a decision soon, you know, what they're going to do. So we're not as a tight timeline because we are moving forward with design with regionalization in mind. And so at some point, if the decision is made not to regionalize, then, you know, we will take out whatever we have to out of the design and move forward to final design without it, so.
Eric, are we incurring costs? Are we incurring costs in designing for regionalization? And if it doesn't occur, will we have to eat those costs?
No, I mean, all of the costs that we have, Donahue isn't charging us anything additional for that, you know. On some of the regionalization items, to look into it, to see what was feasible and what we had to do, we did incur some additional costs with the engineering firms to look at the collection system to see what would need to be upgraded. Those costs have already been expended. That's the extent that we're going to make any additional expenditures at this time. So we do have cost estimates on what it would cost, you know, for regionalization for the other communities, what we would expect them to call, you know.
Is that the 7 million that we hear about once in a while?
Yeah, so the wastewater treatment facility, what Donahue has told us is that, you know, we estimated for us alone would be about $8 million. That includes engineering, construction oversight, and construction costs, okay? So the additional $5 million that we talked about was just for the regionalization. I think it was like 2.7
For the clarifier.
for the clarifier, and then we had another couple million for the, what was it, Dave, the additional UV? Is that what it was? Yep. And then I think there were some incidentals there as well. That brought us to about the $5 million.
Okay.
Yep. And that doesn't include the collection system side of things, though. Those are separate. So.
But regionalization would require some sewer work to bring that flow to the plant, right?
Yeah, so in all those costs, you mean in our collection system? Yes, so we would have to upsize some of the piping in the ground.
And would Marathon pay for that?
It would be shared. So like,
Okay.
when you look at whether it's the age of our pipes or the size of the pipe, so there are certain things that we need to do, you know, with our collection system to make improvements. But if Marathon City, if we had to reserve capacity for them, those pipe sizes would have to go up. They would have to, you know, so that breakdown of costs would be theirs. And so there is a breakdown of their proportionate amount.
At some point, I don't know how other board members feel, I'd like to see a more detailed, I'm not asking for pages and pages of numbers, but some kind of a breakdown of, you know, what the estimated cost is for this project, and maybe break it out into a few basic categories: facilities, collections, disinfection, and with regionalization and without regionalization, so that I think you guys have done a good job of trying to explain it to us, but if we had something on paper maybe at the next meeting or a meeting after that, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, Donahue right now is working on a cost estimate for each process at the wastewater treatment facility, you know, from, you know, the headworks to the drawing to, you know, every process in there. So we'll have that hopefully for the next meeting. We can also break out what we feel is you know, with the regionalization, so you can see them side by side and what those add-ons would be and what those other communities. Now, I haven't seen anything from their engineers as far as their cost to get their wastewater here. You know, what they've told me and just verbally is about $21 million to get it to Wausau, along with the upgrade at the plant. But that didn't include the additional costs for the collection system upgrades that we had proposed. I believe it did not include that. I'm not sure, Steve. This was just verbal, so, yeah, yeah.
But in addition to the clarifier cost, any piping cost, and there would be considerable to bring that wastewater from Marathon into the Wausau system, would also be borne by the other city.
That's correct, and they would also be fully responsible for maintaining that.
I know it's the last item, Jim, but extend your microphone out where it's right in front of you.
Really? Closer is better?
It's not to the
better?
side like this. Give it a
that
shot,
better?
see what happens.
It's not buzzing?
Hey, I could
No.
be wrong, right?
Oh, that sounds better. Okay,
Okay. Questions answered then?
pretty much, thank you.
Okay. Anything else come before the commission today?
Yeah. Are we ready to adjourn?
I like to keep my meetings moving.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple of things. The Class A drying technology, maybe I've missed it, but it was news to me, and I guess I'd like to know if we are serious about going to Class A sludge in the new plant, and if that's the case, if we've looked at alternatives, or is drying the choice, and how was that choice made? Because there are other ways to create Class A.
Do you want to address it, Dave, your discussions?
Well, I don't have a lot to add,
Yeah.
but Donahue, when doing their initial facilities plan study, they evaluated different options.
They did.
And then that's what they came up with. I guess beyond that, I'd have to get more information from them.
Because there's an energy cost associated with drying that can get
Yep.
to be considerable.
That's a good question.
Okay. And Eric, we went through a lot of stuff on your report here. That computer crash,
Yeah.
are we okay on that?
You know, we're having a continual problem with that, obviously. It seems like every couple months I'm coming to the commission and Dave is having issues with that. Dave is working with, trying to get, some software up and running so that we can get something working, in the interim, because we're gonna have to kind of limp by with what we have for a couple of
Yeah.
years until we move forward. So it's been much slower, from when the commission initially approved us to just move forward with a temporary fix. But I think we're on the right track. I don't know if we have a specific time yet or for that.
We've gotten a proposal to do some upgrades so that it would monitor our equipment in the plant. But then there was another purchase for some software that I'd call it the historian, that keeps track of everything. And that was quite expensive. So the next step, if we did make that purchase, if that's something we can use in the future when the plant is upgraded.
That's my next question.
Then that would make that less expensive, and then I would say that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And if
it's compatible with what we plan to do,
Yeah.
that would make sense.
And some of what we do will or could be, and some would just be temporary to get us by for the next 2-3 years till the new parts of the plant would be operational.
Okay, good. And then my other question had to do with point 13 on high-strength waste from Stevens Point. I mean, your point here is that it's being discussed, upside and downside. Has any decision been made?
I think those discussions actually, you mean whether we're going to accept high-strength
Yeah,
waste?
right.
Yeah. We've had those discussions, generate additional biogas, do different things. I don't know that necessarily a decision has been made yet.
Is it a possible revenue stream?
It would be a possible revenue stream. It would be a possible extra source of methane that we could make use of some of that with our boilers in the plant and
Right.
our generators.
Right.
There's some risk we could have issues with processing it, foaming or something. They're getting to be kind of crucial, and so we might try a load on a trial basis and see if we can handle it properly.
Okay.
And then we're also, Stevens Point's talking about a longer-term issue where they don't have enough storage to make it till spring, and so we could possibly process their sludge and thicken it. Our plant we thicken the sludge and we call it a cake, and we spread it out. It's essentially a dry material, even though it is 80% water.
Yeah.
Stevens Point and some other communities do it differently, where they don't thicken it, they inject it as a liquid.
Right.
And so they don't have a means to thicken it, so they
Okay.
can't landfill it. And so we could possibly run it through our presses and thicken it for them. That would be a revenue source for us, and it would help them out. But we'd want to make sure we had permission from the landfill, and it's something I'll talk over with Eric and see how far we want to go with that.
And there's capacity at that landfill? I mean, I seem to remember that they're running out of space out there at some point.
Well, they're planning for the future, and so we're consuming landfill space from a big picture standpoint isn't the best option.
Right.
But at this point, it might be the best option we can come up with if
Temporarily.
temporarily.
Okay.
But, you know, they've also kind of, you know, they would take it over time. I mean, they don't want it all at once, and so
Right.
they would take it and layer it and do different things with it, so, yeah.
Is there anything else?
All I have.
Go ahead. Okay. Is there anything else come before the commission today? Okay. On a personal note, I want to say thank you to our staff and all the commissioners. I know none of us do this, and I joke when I say this, but also with the ring of truth, none of us do this for the money or the appreciation. But I do appreciate each and every one of you and your efforts, and I wish all of your families and you a Merry Christmas or whatever way you celebrate the holiday season. So at that, I'll entertain an an adjournment.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Forrest. Do I have a second? By Mr. Redmond. At this point, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next meeting will be Tuesday, January 9th. At this point, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.